Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to JBDC's virtual Biz Zone. A very special welcome to our new and returning participant of our Biz Zone series. Okay, so this particular time slot is facilitated by the JBDC's Technical Services Department, responsible for assisting clients with their product development needs from concept to market. And today we will be turning the microscope on product development, right? And we have a special treat lined up for you because we're going beyond the realms of design. We're actually going to be looking at developing your products for success. So we will be going beyond the components of design and looking in totality as to when I develop my product, how can I get it successful from concept to market? So our topic today is actually developing your products for success. And our presenter today is no stranger. In fact, he has worn various hats as a JBDC Biz Zone presenter. He has been here numerous times before, not only on the Tuesday sessions, but also as a guest on the Thursday sessions. And I am speaking of none other than Mr. Colin Porter. And he is such a multifaceted person. I'm just going to read a little bit about his profile. He is an innovative professional with close to 3 decades of proven experience in manufacturing, logistics, and product development. He has a BSc in Industrial Engineering from the UWI, that's the University of West Indies. And he's an active member of the Jamaica Institution of Engineers, JIE, where he formerly served as vice president. He's also a registered engineer and board member of the Professional Engineers Registration Board, and also a member of the Industrial Engineering Advisory Committee. He's a part-time lecturer in product design at the Enamani College of the Visual and Performing Arts, and also an avid photographer and visual designer. So, ladies and gentlemen, before I turn right over to Colin, as is the norm, we will be facilitating questions at the end of his presentation. So in the meantime, if you have any questions that may come up, go ahead and type it in the chat, or after he's finished, you can click on the icon to indicate that you want to raise your hand, and we will acknowledge you. So Colin, without any further ado, over to you.
Thank you very much, Dania, and good afternoon to all. Welcome back to another session in our Biz Zone webinar series. So today I'm going to be talking about product development, as Dania mentioned. Can you share my screen for me, please, Dania? Is that possible? Or do I need to do that myself? It's something I do myself, right? Okay, yes, I have to do it myself. Sorry, I'm kind of getting ahead of my time myself here. So I'm gonna start by sharing my screen. Okay, I think we're up and running. So today, as Dana mentioned, we're going a little bit deeper than design, but design is important. So in the presentation, that will come out quite strongly, but we're gonna be talking about designing your product for success. And pretty much just giving you some tips and on how you can have that winning product. Probably what I'll be touching on will not be new for many of you, but it's always good to reinforce our ideas and to look at it from different perspectives. So we're going to be looking at that. Now, just a rundown of what we'll be discussing today. Always start from the basics. What is product development? It's a term we hear a lot, and some of us know what it is, and so on, but want to kind of dig into that a little bit and see the importance of this process. Of course, we're going to think about the importance of it. How do you know what products to develop and focus on? This morning, we had an earlier session this morning with my colleague Leighton Brown from our Central office. I don't know if any of you were in that session, but he touched on some of the bigger picture issues from a business perspective, which is good and it's all connected, and we'll talk about that as well. We're going to discuss the steps involved in developing a product, and how do we now create that final product, which will embed the elements of design, packaging, etc., and then getting it into the hands of the buyers, some of which I will not go too much detail into because those really are literally other webinars themselves. But let us start at the beginning. So when we speak about product development, and here at Technical Service Department, as Dana mentioned, we focus quite a bit on developing products. However, it's always important for persons. I know a lot of creative persons, a lot of talented people who develop products, but it has to be in the context of your business model, of your strategy. Why are you doing this? You can't develop your product in isolation from the other aspects of your business. I'll not be talking about the business model canvas. Leighton spoke about that this morning. It's something that we can assist you with here at JBDC for you to formulate your strategies and so on. But just to bear in mind also that your business model cannot be complete without the product that you're making, right? And so the process of developing the product that will fit right in efficiently and fit snugly into your model is very important. So I want us to understand that context. I'll be focusing today mainly just on the product side of things, but bear in mind that things are connected to other aspects of the business. So just wanted to bear that in mind. So let us start at the beginning. What is product development, right? For some people, it is literally the process or the activities in creating a product, right? You have an idea, you have some raw materials, you have some tools, and you make a product, right? However, from the website entrepreneur.com, they define product development as a process. And we say here it is a process that includes strategy, organization, concept generation, product and marketing plan creation, and evaluation and commercialization of a new product, right? So these are some very key things for us to consider when we speak about product development, right? It is very much a strategy as it is a creative process, right? It also involves commercialization. If it isn't commercialized, has the product been developed? If it's not in the hands of people to buy it and utilize the product, right? So you want to think about that. But product development really on the ground is about how do you transform an idea into something useful for others to use. I've done a couple of workshops before on design thinking, and you'll find some of those principles will come into play in product development in the modern world now, that we have to pull ideas from that philosophy in trying to get products that work for us. Now, product development in the definition speaks about creating new products. But what is a new product really? You know, some people say that there is nothing new under the sun, that literally everything has been created before. So what new can we come up with? And sometimes the challenge for us entrepreneurs, the creative ones, is trying to come up with the next sliced bread. Best things in sliced bread, we always want to do. However, we know that product ideas are generated from a variety of sources and so on. And some product concepts are things that exist already, but you want to put your different spin on it, right? So you'll find that some product concepts are just modifications of what exists already, while some go a little bit deeper in terms of innovation and novelty and stuff. So I have 3 coffee mugs here, right? We have the traditional coffee mug, which is just a container with a handle, and that's good, right? Some people can decorate it and so on. But if I decide that I just learned ceramics and I'm going out there and I'm making coffee mugs, I can very well make a mug like the black one we see on the screen. Or I can go a little bit further and add a little bit more novelty and differentiation to my coffee mug, such as having a little section where I can put cookies if I like, having Oreo and coffee in the morning, or chocolate chip cookie and coffee. Or I need to keep stirring my coffee, so I can have a little thing in the bottom that continually stirs my coffee. right? So we have to understand when we speak about product development now and new products, what are we talking about and what are we doing? Of course, your ideas will be generated from other sources. But why is it important that we go through this process of product development? Why can't I just have a brilliant idea? I went to bed or I'm having coffee one morning and I'm tired for the cookie all over my desk, so I just go and make a coffee mug and slip it underneath it. Yeah, all right, I have the idea, good. I know if I make ceramics, good. I make it, that's my product development. Why do I need to go beyond that? Why isn't that satisfactory, right? Because I show my friends and they like it, but I don't need to go beyond that, do I? Well, let's look at it here. Product development is about responding to market needs and customer needs, right? Do people want this thing? Is there a need? We spoke about looking at persons out there and see what it is that they want to have and so on. So you have to respond to the market ultimately, right? It's not about what you like about the thing that you came up with, right? Product development is also a response to competition, right? You are making a set of items, other people are making it. You need to put some thought in your products before you go in the market against these other persons to ensure that you are as competitive as possible. And what is usually found, certainly from a marketing perspective as well, is that new products usually earn more profit than older ones in the general scheme of things. Of course, you have to do things to ensure that you earn from that. And looking into other production considerations, which we'll talk about later. But especially those products which have some kind of innovative edge to them or some novelty about them, they tend to generate a bit more buzz. And so you'll find that those products are better performers than more mature products. However, product development can also help to reposition your brand or your company in the minds of consumers, right? If you started selling products at one end of the market, right, at a particular price point, you can improve upon that product, come out with variations of the product, and you create a different strategy or a different impression on the market. Many years ago, a couple Japanese automobile makers realized this in terms of getting a shift in focus in consumer minds. Toyota, which we all know as probably the most popular brand in the world in terms of automobiles, but they were known as that utility brand, that cheap brand. They made affordable cars which were very reliable, take it from A to B, not fussy in design and so on. They were just ordinary cars, more or less. But then they realized that there was a whole segment rising, especially in the United States, in the luxury market. And even though they had the Toyota Camry and the Toyota Corolla, these cars couldn't go against some of the other top brands out here, the BMWs and so on. So what did Toyota do? They created a parallel line called Lexus and embedded more luxury features in those cars. It had the quality, it had the reliability, but they added luxury on top of that. And they had to, so that they used that strategy to reposition the company in the minds of consumers. However, consumer probably wouldn't have bought a Toyota luxury car, but they certainly would have bought a Lexus car. So even though everybody knows the same Toyota behind the manufacturer of the vehicle, the brand itself had helped to reposition that the parent company. And so they were able to tap into other markets. And we see that with Honda and Acura and a couple others doing the same kind of thing. So this is something that we also want to consider. How can product development assist me in repositioning my products in the minds of consumers? Think about if you're in the food industry, the agro-processing industry. Can you reposition your products to be targeting the health sector? if you used to make sugary drinks, right? For example. So you want to use product development to help to decide on some of these strategies. Now, a couple of things that product development also helps you to do, and is pretty much just a reiteration of what I'm saying with that strategy thing. It helps you to time the introduction of your product. Going through the process will ensure that you don't introduce your product at the wrong time, right? Sometimes we get an idea, we haven't gone through the process fully, we haven't, which includes some of the market research, etc., and we go to market too early and the product fails. Or we wait too long, we go to market too late, and we can't compete against those early entrants in the market, right? The process also helps us to get an indication of how our product will be able to perform from the perspective of cost. We know how much it will cost us to manufacture this product, whether or not we can meet demand, what our value chain is like, right? What our supply chain is like, who are we getting it into the hands of, and so on. So the process helps us with determining some of these factors. Also, I have up here on the screen a chart that many of us probably should know, the product life cycle graph here, which shows typically, if we follow the red line, that new products take a while to get warm up to the market, so to speak. So you'll find that your sales gradually increase over time when you're in the growth stage and so on. But there will come a point when your product matures and then the product will start declining, meaning you start seeing less sales coming from the sale and performance of your product and so on. Generally, what happens at this point of decline now is that you have two options. You can allow your product to die a graceful death and you pull it from the market because there is no more demand for it. People don't find it appealing. They have switched over to someone else's product and your product is just there and you're pumping money into it, but the sale is not going up and you're just keeping it there for sentimental reasons because the first product you ever made and it's going nowhere and nothing's happening. So you can decide, you know what, let me cut my losses and try something else. Or through analysis, you may decide that, you know, I can revive this product. I can do things to this product to ensure that I extend the life cycle or give the product some longevity. And we can think of many products which have been around from we were yay high and are still going. Some without any change at all. So this graph here is very theoretical because once it reached that growth or that maturity point, it can just level off parallel to the time axis and just keep going, or we can do it. So I want to show two quick case studies now of products who have endured and what they have done to ensure that their lifetime succeeds. Everybody know these little sneakers, the Converse All-Stars. Jamaica, we call them booger, we call them all kind of things. Converse named them after this basketball player from way back when, Chuck Taylor. And he was at the time when basketball, I suppose in the early 1950s, 40s, can't remember the year when Chuck Taylor was around. But if you look at it, this pair of shoe, according to this graphic, was introduced in the year 1917, right? Almost 100 years old. Look at the design. And it is still popular. There was a time when Chuck Taylors were not popular again, and they fell off. But through marketing efforts and design efforts and development efforts, they were able to bring it back. So even as we look at that product life cycle chart, extending the life or reviving your product has a lot to do with marketing as it does with actual product development and product design and so on. And here we see two modern variations of the Chuck Taylors. In pink with Chuck written all over it, in tie-dye, low tops as well as the high top and so on. So, but however, you have to ensure that in reviving your product, there can be some demand for it, that there's a market for it, that you can exploit the product some more. And you look at what retooling you may need or what you can do to ensure that the product becomes profitable. So this is one quick case study. Another case study closer to home that we can identify with is with the beloved picker pepper sauce. Been made by the Lincolnshire family in Shooter's Hill in Manchester from, I think, the 1920s, right? And legend has it that only few family members have the secret to the sauce in terms of the ingredients and how it's made. And even the family members don't have all the secret themselves. One member have part of the formula and they go in and do something in the night and the other person go in at another time and then they mix it and put in the vat and then start packaging. That's what the legend is. Don't know how true it is. And we've had this one picker pepper flavor for a very long time. And then you'd have found over the years that other pepper sauces would have entered the market. And picker pepper could have rested on their laurels and said, we have the tradition, we have the taste, we maintain the quality of the product, everything, it still has the demand. There are some diehard picker pepper fans, and we will only use picker pepper sauce. But as part of their revival process, they would have extended the line, and we'll talk about this somewhat. So you now have different variety. You have gingery mango, spicy mango, hot mango, and all different varieties of picker pepper sauce. So it is a way to help to extend the line, and it brings along the original picker pepper. They didn't drop the original picker pepper and focus on other varieties, but they kept it along, and so you have now different picker pepper sauces to select from. So that is a strategy you can look at, regardless of what the product that you're doing, to look and see how variations can be added to extend the life of your product. So how will I know what products are to be made now? I have some skills. I'm very good with food. I'm very good with fruits. I'm very good with my hands. I'm good with cloth. I'm very good with imagination and so on. I'm going to make some products and so on. So how do I know what am I going to be making? Of course, everything starts with some research, coupled with what you already have bringing to the table, your skills, your experience, your training, etc. Right? And of course, you want to do your deep research and, you know, talking about our business model and everything. But thank goodness, today in 2020, we have access to information right at the tip of our fingers. We can literally get enough in any information we want. We just have to know what information is real and what is valuable, etc. Gone are the days when some market research tools are out of our reach. So I want to tap into those, right? You can get trend reports and other market reports. Here, the first chart I have is just a simple graphic that speaks to global carbonated drink, ready-to-drink tea market. And it will tell you what the key trend is, that consumer focus is shifting towards organic variants of carbonated tea. What the market driver is, increased urbanization along with a rise in demand for healthy beverages. What the market driver is, what the forecast is for the market on a global level. And this comes from an organization called Technavio. There are many market research companies out there. You have Euromonitor International, you have so many of them, I can't remember names right now, that you can get information. Some you will have to pay to get this information. Others you may be able to get some summary reports that gives you some information to jump off on and so on. So you want to dig into trend reports and stuff like that. Do your internet searching. Google is such a powerful search tool, and there are others out there. Use them, try to sift the information and so on. Use other traditional methods. You can use focus groups, do observations. You don't have to have a big formal focus group. You can just have some colleagues or people who you have access to, who you can try and gain information from, right? There are tools out there that marketers use, such as the perceptual map, which is on the right of the screen. And a perceptual map is really just a way to glean the perception of customers' response to certain products or brands out there against certain characteristics. Typically, look at the extremes of two characteristics. So on the horizontal scale, in this case, you look at a product which is less natural or kind of artificial versus products which are more natural. And then on the vertical scale, they look at products which are more tasty versus those which are less tasty, right? And you want to now look at competing products out there and where they fall in this matrix. And you decide, do I want to look at the gap? Sometimes you can see a gap in the perceptual map, like in the quadrant where you have brand B, which is more tasty and more natural. You realize that there are not many products in that quadrant. So could it be that I want to target my product to have these characteristics? Or you may see in quadrant with brand A and brand G, which is more tasty and less natural, the carbonated drinks. Maybe you have more products in there because it is there's a high market demand in there, so you want to go for that. So you can use tools like this to determine exactly how you position your product or how your product will fare against the competition. And you go through that. There's quite a bit of information online that teaches you how to use a perceptual map and how to create your own, among other things. Or if you have access to persons with a marketing background, you want to have them assist you. But the point is that when you decide to make your product, even if you have an idea already, you want to do research to validate what you think, what you feel about your product, how it will perform in the market, and that you will be able to get it into the hands of your consumers. So now you know what product to make and so on and things. We're going to look at now how products are classified. One thing I realize in the world that we can't escape is categorization. And as designers and people who make products, manufacturers and so on, sometimes we don't like to be categorized or want to be free and do stuff. But the way how things are set up, unfortunately, we tend to be in categories. And that can work to our advantage, and then we can break out once we understand where we are, what our ground zero is, our starting point. And what we have found is that typically products are ganged in three general areas. Marketers put products in three areas. You can have that radically new product where you can create a new market segment literally by having a breakthrough product which are so revolutionary that they create an entirely new market. These are products with high innovation, new inventions, etc. And think of the recent past, a device like the drone, right? A couple of years ago, when we heard about drones, we would think about military that they use some unmanned vehicle to shoot how much thousands of miles across the ocean to drop bombs without having any pilots in there to get harmed or what have you and so on. But drones have become a totally new product which has many spin-offs. You have drones which are simple toys, you have drones which are high-end, are used in surveying and mapping and movie making and a whole variety of reasons. But the drone, as we know it in the commercial sense, was one of those products which was a totally new creation. So you can have the ability for you to come up with a product which is so unique and so new, you literally create your own market segment, and then others will now play catch up and to try and compete with you. And this normally gives you an advantage in that you're ahead of the game, but it also puts you under pressure in that you need to keep ahead now, so you need to keep and ensure that your product maintains that market lead. Then the other segment are products which are not entirely new. They have existed, but for you, the product developer, the product manufacturer, it is a new product that you have just started to make from a totally different market segment that you had not previously targeted. right? And this is where you introduce a new product that other people have been making, but it's new for you. So you want to compete against these persons because you see some benefit in making a product of this nature. And the example I have there is the Microsoft Surface tablet. Microsoft, as we know, is famous for software, Windows software, Office, Word, Excel, the software side of things. Until a few years ago, Microsoft probably realized, hold on, we're making software for literally every computer out there, but we don't have our own computer. So we want to create a device that our software will work optimally on, right? And so they created the Surface family of devices. Tablets were new, but Microsoft never made it before. So you could be in an agro-processing business and you are making pepper sauce, but you may decide to jump and you want to make natural beverages, right? How do you get into that market? Now, what strategies will you use to develop your product and so on, where your competitors are and so on. And then the third category is where you already have a product in the market, in a particular market segment, and you stay in that segment, but you enhance or expand your product line, like the pick a pepper example we spoke about earlier. So it gives you a chance to widen and increase your depth in the product, in the market segment by introducing new products. You already have track record, perhaps, in making these products, so you capitalize on that track record and that experience in creating much more products to satisfy whatever market demand exists out there. Now, once you have decided what category product you are focusing on, who your market is, you have done your market research, right? You have narrowed down on a set of products that you're going to focus on, then how do you pull the product together? And here I'm going to depart from the development part a little bit and talk about design. Not getting too deep into design here, don't want this to be a graphic design presentation, but there is a set of rules or principles, really, not necessarily die-hard rules or hard, fast rules where you have to stick with them, that have been guiding many designers for quite several decades now. The gentleman there on the screen is a German designer called Dieter Rams. And he was famous from as far back in the 1950s for developing products for a German brand called Braun, B-R-A-U-N. Many of us here probably not old enough to remember Braun products, but they were a premier German brand. They made quite a variety of things. They made electronics. They made things like electric shavers. They made household appliances. And Dieter Ram was responsible for designing many of their products for quite a few decades. And in 1974, this is long after he had been designing, he came up with this list of what he considers 10 principles of good design. And one thing about the 10 principles of good design is that it guides a designer in creating their product. But as I mentioned, you don't have to follow the principles, right? And what you, in today's day, the person who seem to have embraced and used these principles a lot are manifest through a lot of Apple products. You look at when Apple came out first with their iPod and the iMac and their MacBooks, and now the iPhones and iWatches and their various stuff, you realize that there's a certain design aesthetic that they follow. The chief designer at Apple, one Jonathan Ive, was a student of Dieter Rams, and he took that philosophy over into designing Apple products where they're very clean, they're very simplistic, and so on. And so the 10 principles here, as we have it, good design is innovative, So innovation and that creativity and so on is always good in embedding in your design. And bear in mind, let me pause before going through the others. He probably would have been speaking from the perspective of, as an industrial designer, making certain types of consumer products. However, these principles can be applied to quite a wide variety of products. It could be agro-processing products, it could be fashion products, it could be home accessories, it could be footwear, it could be the headwear. You name the category of product, you can apply one or more of these principles, right? Good design makes a product useful. Design or having a product is about function, right? You make a pair of sandals, they serve a function. They protect your feet from the hot tarmac that you step on at the minimum, right? But good design is aesthetic. So the sandals have to look appealing. It must appeal to a certain audience. It must appeal to a particular type person. So the aesthetics are very important. Good design makes a product understandable. How do I use this product, right? It must be as fairly, as simple as possible that one will know how to use it without going through a 200-page user manual, right? Or even a simple thing as a pair of shoes, where you lace up the shoes, it must be obvious to the person who is wearing the shoes so that they don't use your product in the incorrect way. Good design is unobtrusive. It can't be too blaring or jarring, and it helps to make the product understandable at the same time. Even if it's a visual design, unobtrusive in the sense that there's not too many competing elements in there, and it's not creating confusion for the person who will interface with that product. Good design is honest. Never you make a product that seems to give an impression that it can do something that it can't, right? Always have your product be true to what it should be doing and ensure that comes across in the design. Good design is long lasting. We saw that with the pair of Chuck Taylor sneakers, right? However, there are some designs where long lasting will be several years and not for several generations. You have to know what your design is and what you want to achieve with the design, right? You're following this year's fashion trend, but you have to change for next year, right? Now, the big trend in fashion is what they call disposable fashion, where you buy it today for cheap, you throw it away, and you buy something else, right? But good design is long lasting. And that's good because some long lasting designs now become icons. And people will start making variations of it or use it as a design inspiration to make new items and so on. So I want to strive to make your design long lasting. Good design is thorough down to the last detail, right? So think about the quality of the thing, the detailed design, everything must be in harmony how you make it. If you put a label on there, the way how the label interacts with the actual container, right? And so on, the details are very important, as you know, as persons who are developing products. Number 9 is very important, and bear in mind that he said this in 1974, and it is probably just as relevant, if not more relevant, in the year 2020 going forward. It is about being environmentally friendly. How can your design generate as little pollution as possible? How it can utilize resources which are sustainable and replenishable, etc., and so on. And interestingly, in his description of being environmentally friendly, Dieter spoke about visual pollution. Try to minimize visual pollution in your design, which I interpret to mean things which are wasteful, which are in the design, which don't need to be there. So you remove them. And finally, is good design is as little design as possible. There are some designers who embrace this philosophy of less is more, or less but more, where you want your thing to be clean. So while you consider the aesthetics and making the product understandable and so on, you want to ensure that there is some balance between the functionality of the product, how it looks, how it functions, and to provide just enough information to the person who is interfacing with your product, that they get just the right amount of information and not too much, which will lead to confusion, visual pollution, etc., with the product, right? So these are some principles that work very well in creating a product. Of course, in designing the product, there are many other considerations that we need to look at in terms of the form, the function, the materials that you select and use, the method of production, the packaging, etc. We'll talk about some of those in the next few slides coming up. But by looking at these principles, then you want to embed it with other aspects of your design. Now, you may even think, okay, how does this apply to if I'm making a food product, right? It could obviously be manifested through the packaging and the labels and so on. But it also can come across in the actual food product itself, right? How attractive is your product? If you're making drops and gizzards and grita cake, your thing better have some aesthetics in them. It better look good. Because if the food don't look good, people aren't going to buy it. So the shape that you make your gizzard in, right? How crumbly it is and how much little jagged piece on it, you want to consider that. And how can I form my food product that when even in the packaging, beyond the packaging, it has this appeal, right? It must be honest. People have been making some stuff and it has been discovered, people making granola bars and calling them health bars and so on. But when people really analyze them, the sugar level is so high, sodium level so high, right? And they say, but you're promoting this as a health product and it's really not that healthy, right? So you have some truth in what you're presenting there. So the principles can be applied not just in these tangible craft type or consumer products, but it can go into other categories of products as well. So you want to bear that in mind when you're formulating, you're designing, you're creating your product. Right, so let's talk about the actual process now and the steps which are involved in moving from ground zero, from concept all the way to the end. Obviously, I spoke about some of these things before when we did a presentation on design thinking, so I won't go too deep into that. But obviously, you're from the concept, and we touched on some things earlier, in terms of getting the right idea of the product that you want to make, embedding and utilizing all this information to formulate your concept. And if we equate it to when we speak about design thinking, this is at your inspiration point of view now. So you think about things like empathy. How do I, put myself in the minds of the people who are going to be using my product, right? Want to get idea of what trends are prevailing, right? And very importantly, if it's a new product, if you're already in business and you have your brand kind of established or your brand is growing or you're trying to develop your brand, how will the concept fit within my brand or my brand DNA as people are now referring to it? If you're a startup, then what are my general brand ideas? What kind of brand do I want to create? And will my product fit into that brand concept? So from the very get-go, you want to ensure that you have a lot of these things being considered. And the next stage is where you actually focus on the design itself, right? Taking into consideration some of the things I just spoke about, but you want to ensure that you have your design documented in a way through your design brief. These are the aspirations of the design. What are some of the features, the characteristics, the market, etc., and so on are embedded in your design brief. And we had done a session some weeks ago on design brief with my colleague Jason Bellavante, the product specifications become important. If you're making food, normally you write down your formulation at this point early. But what I have found is that a lot of persons who are doing fashion-based products, home accessories, the wooden products, the leather products, and so on, we don't write down our specifications. So if I am making a leather belt or a leather wallet and so on, I need to write down my specifications. I need to write down, and don't keep in my head what type of leather I use, what colors will I be making it in, what are the dimensions of the belt, right? What is the process of assembling the belt, right? How long does it take to make the belt, right? Which will come out further on once you're doing prototyping and so on, so that you can standardize your product as much as possible. We know it's difficult sometimes to get back the same color leather, but at least you have it written down in a book, in a manual or what have you, that my belt is 4.25 inches wide. I use this type of thread to sew it. I use this buckle on it, and so on. Why is that important? Because when the business grows and you have other people making the belts for you, instead of you over them each time, measuring the tape measure to make sure it's 4.25, and tell this person cut the belt and cut it 4.5 inches. You can always refer to the specifications. From the specifications, you can make templates that they use to cut out the different pieces and then assemble it, right? But you want to have your specifications documented and accessible for you to use, for you to refer. You can make modifications and so on. During the design stage as well, you start going deeper into how it fits in, how it synchronizes with your branding, with your brand, but also start thinking about how will the branding, the visual aspects of the branding be applied to the product if it's necessary, through a label, through a tag, through your stamp on it, some identifying factor that ties it into the brand concept that we spoke about earlier. And that extends to your packaging. What kind of concept? Don't wait until you're ready to package, to make the product, to go out to market to start think about, okay, what kind of packaging I'm going to put it in now? What packaging fit? Start visiting suppliers of packaging, people who the bottles, or you don't want to put in this bottle. So you're forced to buy the one bottle which is available here in Jamaica, versus if you did a search online, you found you could have bought in a reasonable number, 100 bottles for a reasonable price and get it in Jamaica. You'll register with Ministry of Industry and Commerce as a manufacturer, and you get a little incentive to bring it in without paying too much cost and so on. Right? So you want to do that from early, because I want my product to stand out, so I can put the same bottle that everyone has on the shelf. Importantly as well is your intellectual property. Once you have formulated what your design looks like, you want to start thinking and doing research and applying even. If you think you're going to go through with this particular design for IP. It could, in a lot of cases, for the products that we work with, you would go for your industrial design. But you may want to get your trademark done at this point as well, the name that you're going to be attaching to the product, if it's unique. But industrial design is also important. If your product meets the requirements and of novelty and being new, then it will be considered. Why do you do this at this stage? One, it will tell you if someone else has that design already registered, or if the design is registerable, right? If they don't, then it gives you the advantage of registering it before you put it out on the road, because if you put it on the road and didn't register the IP, then someone will copy it and you have a very small chance of any kind of protection at that point, because Jaipur is, but you never register it, don't have a public domain already, so people are free to do it, because never protect. So you want to start doing these things during the design stage. Obviously, the design stage is iterative. You may find that after you design and you go to the third step, prototyping, you may have to make some changes to the design, and you go back to step 2. You may even have to go back to step 1 to kind of get reacquainted with some of the information you had before that triggered your design and so on, right? This is the ideation stage we're at now. So you're testing your idea, your design, you're trying to validate it. So you start doing samples, right, at different levels now, but your ultimate aim here is to have a workable sample, a sample in the finished state in which you plan to put it on the market. This will help you to identify and fine-tune the materials that we were speaking about earlier. Sourcing your materials, converting the material, what equipment do I need or have, right, to make my product at the desired quality that I need. How is the costing coming out? What are my production runs are likely to look at? Because, okay, I've done the sample, and I know in a production situation, it should take me X amount of minutes to make this item. So therefore, the direct cost will be Y, and I can predict what the other overheads would be and so on. So it gives you an idea where my cost is at, and can I put this product out at the price point that I really desire or not. If not, then I have to make modifications and so on, right? So your prototype stage is very important. Of course, with prototyping, we can also use it to do some amount of market testing as well to get some real life feedback now with people outside your immediate circle to see if your product is meeting all the requirements that you have set out to achieve, right? Then the final stage now, commercialization, requires certain things to be done before you literally get it to in the hands of the retailer or the hands of your consumer. At this point, you want to finalize your packaging, because with some products, you would have to do some amount of testing and so on, especially for food products. So you can now attach your nutritional panel on it. You can ensure that your label has met the requirements of the Bureau standard, etc. But there are other products which may require certain other questions answered at the prototype stage and at that final stage for manufacturing, for you to finalize your packaging, both the design and the concept of the packaging. You want to also finalize your production process. Do I have all the tools? Can I do everything myself? Will someone have to do an aspect or all the production for me? And we're going to talk about that shortly. But this is what the production process will be. This is where I get my raw materials. These are the type of skills I need to make this thing in a continuous and continued stage so that I can meet my demand, right? Am I doing all the production myself? Will others have to help me? If I'm doing all myself, do I have all the skills? Am I capable enough, etc., and so on? So you finalize that. Of course, you look at the whole situation of promotion, market access now, your logistics and distribution, and so on, which is another thing, but it is a part of the process you have to consider, because if steps 1, 2, and 3 have not been worked out fully and properly, step 4 will not work, right? So you want to ensure that you have all that in place. So once we go through that process, where are we now? We want to look at production. I'm going to focus a little bit on production now and see what we can look at. How do we get the product out there? Now, typically, where we can be faced with 2 avenues to take. We can look at producing the items ourselves, or we can outsource it using contract manufacturing. So let's look at the pros and cons of both of them. Typical pros and cons. For those of us who decide that we want to make our own products, then we control all decisions as it relates to that production. We schedule it when we want to, we schedule how many we're going to make, we schedule what variations, we schedule all the factors and points that impact upon production. We have full control over the labor and all the other resources, right? So we know what levels of inventory to keep, who to hire, what skills to utilize, things like that. We have a freedom to schedule the production mix. Do I make one product first and satisfy all of that, then switch to another one? Do I have quick turnaround? Do I make changes on the fly? Emergency changes, I get a last minute request for something. Do I just stop production of something else and put it another thing into production? Things like that. So we literally have full control over our facility. We decide how to lay out the facility. We decide how big a facility we need. All decisions are ours. However, on the downside is typically, depending on what you're making, obviously, is a relatively high cost of investment for starting up, right? Especially if you have a new facility, you have a new, you're a startup and you're getting into this for the first time, right? But there's also a fairly high cost of maintaining the facility. Your operating costs, you have to absorb and be responsible for taking care of your operating costs of maintaining the facility, your utilities, your inventory, machinery upkeep, paying your workers and all the costs that go with that, right? And security costs, etc. So all the costs in keeping a facility operational, you are responsible for those if you are doing your own facility. However, if you decide that, you know, I'm going to have somebody make this thing for me, then the advantage of that is that you have less resources to manage, less overheads, low investment in material, labor, etc. Because many facilities, they would be utilizing their material, their labor, and so on. There are some models where you may have to supply your materials. In the very rare cases, like if you're going to use JBDC incubator, you have to come in with your labor, obviously, and so on. But some people will say, boy, this is a less headache for me now, because I just call a man and say, listen, I need 200 of my item by X time. And he supplies me. I pick up the fully packaged and manufactured item, and I go on with my market. What's the downside to that model? There's less flexibility in scheduling. You have an agreement with this person, and they tell you, okay, I can do your production for you at a particular time of the month. If I get an emergency order, however, chances are he can't respond to that, because he's doing other production for whether for himself or herself or for other people as well. And I said, no, sorry, we agreed that your thing is every Monday to the first Monday to Friday in the month. So you can't come to me the second week, or other people have that time already scheduled and it can't change for them because they need their products as well, and so on. So you're kind of locked into what they have. You have less control of cost. Utility bills rising and stuff. Even though with your own facility, yes, you may have to respond to changes in your utilities and costs, but chances are you can kind of juggle the figures, so to speak, in a way which is comfortable to you. But if your contract manufacturer can say, listen, costs gone up by 10%, so I add 10% on your costs. You're probably going to have very little, if any, room to negotiate any reduction in that increase with such a person, right? So you have very little control in terms of those cost elements that you have no input in. And then one of the bigger risks as well is exposure of your IP to others, because you have to share your specifications with this person if they're going to be making your product to meet the standard that you have set. And if they're going to be conforming with your design, you have to expose some IP to them. Obviously, one would hope that you would have some protection before you go to such a person You would have some contractual obligation that would have some clause in there about IP and so on. However, things can happen and people find a way around that and try and capitalize on your idea. So these are some of the things you want to look at. So these are the two models that you're faced with when you are concerned production. You have to decide which works best for you, which is the one that you think you're the most comfortable with, which will allow you to make a product that can perform in the market in the way in which you want it to perform. And what you will find, and this here now is just a schematic of typically how the outsourcing model works, the contract manufacturing model. You, who is the enterprise, you control every aspect of the business except the production. So you would decide on the concept and design direction, right? You merely outsource that to a production facility who then gives you back the finished product. You handle the logistics and the distribution and everything else, and you decide how to retail it if you're into retail, or you give it to a distributor who will put on the market for you. And it's a model which is used both here in Jamaica, for a lot of people who do agro-processing especially, and it is used internationally by large consumer companies. Apple uses it where they their production in China. Most of the large electronic companies use it and so on. And as I mentioned, you'll find hybrids of this model in that you may only outsource a part of your production, but you in-house do final packaging perhaps. So you could be doing cookies, just a random example, but you don't have the capability to bake cookies. So you approach National Bakery or somebody who has some capacity and they bake the cookies for you, but they deliver it to you in a big box, and you have a set of persons who now package it into your smaller sachet with your branding and so on, and then you send it out to the market. So there are some variations with this model. So in winding down now, we see that we have mapped our strategy on how to develop our product. We spoke about some design considerations, what you need to look at, including putting down some details on the specifications of the product, which I should mention, not from a design point, but you also want to document your process. I haven't spoken too much about the operations side here today. Again, different workshops. I haven't spoken about layout of the facility and things like that. We also want to document the process. Step 1, step 2, step 3 in the most concise and precise way. So we have gone through all of that. We have looked at our production. So we have our product, and we know that we would consider packaging and so on. I like to think of packaging now as dressing up your product, right? You're ready to go out the road now to show off, make people see you. You're in the crowd, you're in the place, you must look good. What packaging standards exist for the category of your product that you have, right? And sometimes not just packaging standards, but we're talking about packaging now. So what does the Bureau standard say must be on a label? How should the label be displayed? What information should be on it? And so on. What materials are suitable for the packaging so that it doesn't do any harm to the product or the consumer who is engaging with the product, and so on. We spoke about IP requirements already, right? You have that in place before you go to the market. And of course, the branding, language, and messaging and all that stuff, which are important now to sell the product, are a part of that deal. Can be discussed in other forums as well, and so on. So this is where now you pull everything together and you ensure that the product is meeting all these requirements. Everything must be in sync. So your product must be in sync with the concept as well as the marketing requirements now to get it into the hand of the producer. Of course, very importantly, as people who develop products, and even if we are small companies or we may have a little marketing arm and stuff, very important to know, for me, a part of the product development process is the post-sales support. What do I mean by that? You offer your consumer the ability to give you feedback on how your product performs, but also for you to make adjustments if necessary. So go back to the belt example I was using. I'm making this belt and so on. But after 5 years, apart from the consumer had the belt and the starts get worn and so on, do I offer the service where they can come to me and I offer a service where I replenish the leather and I repolish the leather and get it back up and new and running? Or is it that I said, no, man, go and go buy a new belt from me, right? But you say, look at ways in which you can support your customers after they have purchased your item. Because remember, nowadays, people are purchasing experiences and not just a mere product. So in your process, you want to think about satisfying that experience as well. So the product you make must be about an experience. And how can you ensure that that experience continues even after they have handed over the money to you and something happens and so on. That's part of branding as well and so on. So we won't get too deep into it. But that's it. That's the end of my presentation. Don't think it was very long. Touched on some key areas. There are some areas which we agree that we can go deeper on. So maybe down the road we can speak about some of these areas some more. And I want to thank you very much. And we are open for questions and comments if you have any. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Colin. A very thought-provoking and thorough presentation. So as Colin said, we are open for questions. So if you want to, you can actually type your question in the chat, or you can click on the icon indicating that you want to raise your hand, and we will certainly acknowledge you. So I see so far, Colin, Bev Garden has said, thank you, very informative presentation.
Thank you, Bev.
Right. I really don't know if persons will have a lot of questions for you today. Okay, I'm seeing where Melissa Johnson has raised her hand. So we're going to just ask that her mic be open so that she can ask her question. Where is she?
Her mic is still muted.
Are you still muted?
Mm-hmm.
Hold on. Okay, in the interim, I'm just going to...
She's unmuted now, Daniel.
Okay, all right. All right, go ahead, please.
Okay, thank you so much for that presentation. I wanted to know if the slides would be available for circulation.
Well, Colin, we can, but generally what we do, Melissa, the entire presentation here, we should have the slides, will be uploaded to our YouTube page. So it will be there. But if you wish to get the slides separately, I'm sure I can get them to you. So you can contact us after the webinar. My email address is on the slide, as you see. You can just send me an email and I can share them with you. But the presentation itself, because as you realize, the slides by themselves sometimes don't say much. You know, they're more visual in some cases. But the full presentation will be on our YouTube channel, maybe in a few days' time, Daniel.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much, Colin. I see we have a couple comments. Michelle McDonald has said, thanks, learned some new things today.
Thank you.
Misha Morrison is saying presentation was very informative and easy to follow along with.
And for those who have learned something new, remember that we have a team here at JBDC who can take you through some of these steps in the process. We can assist you to get your product there. So feel free to contact us afterwards, and we can, you know, go a little bit deeper in some of the areas that you have learned something about today, and we can support you in getting your product to the point where you want it.
Okay, and that certainly is true, Colin. We have a whole product development unit, along with, you know, a food unit. We have visual communications. We have so many units that are within the technical services department that can assist you. And I'll certainly give out our contact information shortly. Just to let you know too, Colin, that we have a couple more comments wherein Vanessa Hilton has said this was very informative. I've learned quite a lot. Thank you. COB and Fagan is saying the information was great.
Mm-hmm.
And Michelle McDonald is actually asking, will you be doing a future presentation of registration, pros, cons, etc.? There is a lot of misconception about registering an SME out there.
That's a consideration. That probably, you're talking about registering the business itself, Michelle, I assume? Or do you just operate a business without registering, about formalizing?
It sounds a lot like it's more aligned with the registration of a business, but we will be having some sessions that will be facilitated by the Business Advisory Services Department. Yes, okay. She has said yes. Yeah, so I'm certain at that time, Michelle, you'll be able, they'll more or less probably cover some of those areas in some of the webinars that they will be facilitating about registration and so forth.
Right, and Stacey and Campbell is asking if we offer assistance in finding proper packaging for a specific type of product. We do that, Stacey, so you can contact us. We see what your product is and so on, and then we can work up to the packaging and see what we can offer in terms of trying to get that type of packaging for the product.
Okay, so she has said great, thank you, Colin. All right, any additional questions for Colin? All right, Stacey has also said great session, thanks. So any additional questions? Because as I said, Colin, you are so thorough. I just think that the questions will be limited in any event. Okay, Melissa Johnson is saying, do you provide support in identifying manufacturers for your products?
It's not a real service that we offer, but what we find in working with our clients, certain things may arise, and getting a manufacturer may be one such situation which may arise, and we may try and tap into the network that we have to see if we can find persons who can assist. But we pretty much just do a referral kind of thing. You would have to know, do your own negotiations and so on with anyone who we would refer you to. So we can provide some of that. Donovan McLean is asking, do we offer an online classroom facility? I would think this would be our online classroom for now, Dania, right? This is
right, exactly.
Every Tuesday, and I think Thursdays we are here with different topics. So this is closest we have for now anyway to online classroom. And then Avon Griffiths is asking if we help with production scaling. We do, Avon, and I know it's a good point approach to point out in that when we work with persons, it's a collective of different departments that work with you. We tend to start on the business side of things. When we started, I told you the whole context of product development is that we look at it as a part of your overall business strategy and so on. So before we jump in the production scaling side, you would sit with our business advisory department. They would look at your business strategy overall, see where you're at now, what kind of scaling you think about, and then we would assist you in that with a combination of business advisory officers or production engineers and any other skills we have in house that may be necessary with that. But we do offer that.
Actually, Donovan McCarran, Colin is saying he's speaking about renting.
For renting. We don't have any classroom spaces, Donovan, unfortunately not. We have some rooms that we use for our own training and other events that we rent for short-term basis, but not for classroom type activities.
Yeah. And Colin, I don't know, since somebody asked about the facilities we rent, you want to just speak about some of our incubator facilities?
Oh, yes, right. So, and I did kind of mention that a little bit. We have 3, what we call incubator facilities here, or short-term production spaces. One is devoted to agro-processing and food products. One is dedicated to fashion and sewn products, and the other for what we call gift and craft items. Now, you can rent these for 1 day at a time or for longer periods. We provide the necessary kind of technical support in using the equipment and the facilities there. And we can help you with your product development. So it's not just a space that you're getting, but you're getting access to our expertise who would guide you through either the development process or the actual production process for your product. You can contact us again. We can provide with more details on these 3 incubators. For the craft incubator, persons doing leather craft, jewelry, textile printing, what else do you know we're offering in that one? Those are some of the key areas, general, doing light type wooden products and beading and stuff like that. So it's flexible.
And I'm seeing where Bev Garden has said, Colin, JBDC is very helpful with information and referrals. Their product development team is extremely knowledgeable and very helpful with information and advice.
Thank you,
that's a confirmation for us.
Man. Thank you for that, Bev.
Okay, Donovan McLaren is also asking if our facility offers a stable internet service for online teaching regionally.
Boy, I forgot to talk to my IT people, Donovan, but the fact that we're online here and nobody drop off means that we're stable enough. What I'd suggest you do, Donovan, send us an email, contact us, and we can have you speak to the relevant persons in charge of the facilities and so on. And they probably can assist you some more in seeing if what you want to have, if we can provide that support.
Okay. All right. So Avon Griffiths has said, or Avon Griffiths has said, okay, great. Thank you as well. So any more questions? So in the interim, let me just go ahead and give out our contact information. If you want to contact the Technical Services Department, you can call us via 876-758-3966-8. That's 876-758-3966-8, just in case you want to get additional information on any of the services that we offer.
And Avon Griffiths is asking as well if our incubators accommodate baking capabilities. The answer to that is yes, Avon. We have some baking capability, so you can contact us.
Right, so we have different types of equipment in the kitchen incubator, and definitely we even have a convection oven, I believe, and so
we can do baking, beverages, jams and jellies, sauces, condiments, typical things like that we can facilitate.
Okay, all right, let me see. Okay, so she has said great, thanks, awesome, thank you. So So I think we can go ahead and wrap up, Colin, unless you... Okay, well, Michelle McDonald is asking about the cost per day. I guess you may want to give the different because each incubator has a different...
Yeah, contact us. Because it depends on what you'll be using and doing, and we'll work out the cost for you. So if you contact us, let us know what kind of product you're going to be doing, then we'll work out the cost. Okay, so we're looking forward to that, Michelle.
Yeah. Okay. All right, so I think we should, well, Bev Gardner said our incubator is very reasonable.
Thank you very much, Bev.
On average, the craft incubator is about $750 per day outside of the equipment.
Yeah, it starts at one. Yeah. So we're very reasonable. That much I can tell you. You will not get rates as affordable as us because our thing is about facilitation as well. So we want to see you, especially startups, have a good footing to start growing and getting your product out there.
Right. So, and I think the kitchen is a bit more. The kitchen is about $3,850 per day outside of some of the various
starting, that is a base, and you add to that daily.
Yeah, so just to give you a ballpark figure that you can work with when you're thinking about utilizing any of those. Okay, so any more questions? Or the fashion incubator?
I don't like to give figures like that, to be honest. I prefer you come in and we'll see what you have because we have to mix and match your needs with the equipment to work out the cost, right? So just send me an email, Tanya, so I can be reminded of your email address. And then based on the discussion now, we put you onto the people and we'll work out the cost.
Okay.
All right.
All right. So address, phone, and email, please. Okay, Donovan McCarran, I will repeat our contact information. You can contact the Incubator and Resource Center or Technical Services generally at 876-758-3966-8. That's 876-758-3966-8. If you want to contact Colin Porter,
my email address is displayed.
is right at the bottom of the screen, cporter@jbdc.net. And you can also contact the JBDC generally at info@jbdc.net. Also, our location, I'm assuming you're asking about the address for the Technical Services Department, is located at Unit 10A76 Marcus Garvey Drive, the Garments Free Zone.
And there's a hashtag for our social media handles, JBDC Jamaica. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube.
Right, and you can also check out our website as well. So please don't forget that you can use any of those mediums if you need to contact us and get additional information. Also, don't forget to check out our YouTube page. You can check it out. You can subscribe to our page. You can like any one of the sessions that have been posted there. And this particular webinar will be uploaded shortly, I guess within a few days or so. So if you missed any information or you want to go back and look over what you want to just have concrete within your mind, you can actually check out our YouTube page, JBDC Jamaica. Okay, Colin, I don't know if you want to take this one. Do you think there will be any expos this December?
Well, I think your guess is as good as mine, considering that the pandemic is still upon us and there are no big events being planned as far as I know yet. However, our corporate communications department normally are responsible for our expos, so the ones that we are involved in. So if you just keep in touch with our social media pages and our website, then you will hear what will be happening for the rest of the year. As Bev reminded, the Christmas in July event was done virtually, so who to tell? But we can, once that information is out, we normally put out our information ahead of any kind of event or activity. That's especially for bigger events with enough lead time. So keep watching our website and our social media pages, and then we will inform you.
Right, and as a matter of fact, we actually have the employee engagement seminar that is going on across the month of October, and that is being done virtually for the first time. It's normally held at the Jamaica Conference Center.
That's correct.
So you can also check that out just in the event that you still can. Okay, so Bev Gordon is saying her business development manager always sends her info. She's awesome.
Yeah, man, we'll keep in touch with you.
Yeah.
And I say, Shabane Fagan asking again if we get a recording. As we mentioned, Shabane, it will be on YouTube, on the JBDC page. We have a page there on YouTube, which you can.
JBDC Jamaica.
JBDC Jamaica. And not only this one will be there, but all previous webinars that we've been having since, I think, probably April are all posted on our YouTube page. So you can visit there and see them at your leisure.
Right. All right, so I think we would have covered all the bases, right, Colin?
Yes, I think we have. And thank you, everybody, for staying with us and for being here. And we look forward to seeing you again. Daniel can tell you more of what's coming.
Yes, we definitely look forward to having you here for our next session. Next week, we will be looking at the perfect finish wire work. So we are actually going to take you beyond preparing for product and product development. Again, we'll be doing an actual demonstration of how you can utilize wire and make some very unique products, you know, some very simple but good products that can come out of that. And our special present, well, we have a very special presenter. I don't even know if I should say it, Colin.
No, not yet, not yet.
We have a very special presenter for you next week. So if you can, you should definitely tune in to our session. So until then, please take care of yourselves and be safe. I don't know if you have any final words, Colin?
No, just be safe, wear your mask, keep your social distance, and we look forward to engaging with you virtually. Send us your emails, make the phone calls, and we'll see you here again next week.
We definitely look forward to hearing from you, and give us a call or an email. So until next week, same time, same place. Goodbye.